Good morning. I'm coming to talk to y'all today about a peripheral topic to horses and the horse industry, but a very important one, and one that I want to put my weight behind, vocalize about, and maybe affect some change, remove some stigmas and so forth. And that is mental health within the horse and ranching and other communities that are all related to this. The suicide rates among horse people, veterinarians, ranchers, farmers, dairymen, agriculture in general, the suicide rates are quite alarming. They're very high among the veterinary community. They have the highest suicide rate of any profession right now. It's time some of that stuff changed. We have a problem and we're not dealing with it. If I had a 2-year-old with a problem, they were sitting back, they were whatever, I would work on the problem, and yet this has this stigma associated with it, that if you go to therapy or you seek help for mental troubles, that you're weak. We need to get past that. We really do. I would way rather that you come and sit in the kitchen and we make a pot of coffee at 2 o'clock in the morning than that I'm a pallbearer at your funeral 2 days later. And that's an open invite. I don't really care if I know you or not. If you're having struggles, I'm a safe place to talk. I would way rather help you than mourn you. No question about that. What I'm here to talk about specifically is Buck the Trend, which was a Horseman's mental health summit that happened this past weekend. I was one of the 12 or 13, 14 participants in it. I wanted to describe a little bit about it here. We're going to do multiple podcast episodes on this for the Adult Onset Horsemanship podcast, if y'all aren't aware. And I know the Best Horse Practices podcast that is produced by Miss Maddie Butcher. She was the founder of this. This is her brainchild, her baby. I cannot give that lady enough kudos for all of the work that she does to make life a better place for horses and people. Basically what this was, we all went to Colorado, not far from Durango, a little town called Mancos, and Friday night everybody kind of got together and it was a meet and greet. Most of us did not know one another. Most of the people were kind of spread out across the country. The next morning we met and the therapists were there, and that was when the work started. We talked about childhood. We took some social style tests to kind of show us what our social style was. It is an interesting thing when you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s. Yeah, I'll say that too. We had people that were, I think the youngest participant was 22, the oldest was 72. It's about half men, half women, diverse backgrounds, but all kind of horse or ranching related. A couple people in law enforcement. I'm not going to get too personal or name names here. There are a few that have volunteered to come on the podcast again and use their name and speak publicly, but I'm not going to out anybody. It's a confidential deal, you know. And we were kind of receiving training to help. So this wasn't just therapy for us. It was recognizing some childhood traumas and how much what you do and how you handle things is rooted in that. I'll say one of my personal things with that, I had a good childhood. I had good loving parents. I don't really consider, and I scored a 0 on the test of childhood trauma. I learned as I went through that list of things in childhood trauma, I don't know that my children's score would be a 0. It was pretty eye-opening to me about some parenting things, some bitching that I had about stuff that happened to me as a kid, and then I think I'm doing that essentially to my own kids, and I understand the intention behind it and what I'm doing, but I'm actually doing the same thing that was done to me that I'm here complaining about. So it did offer some insight and some grace, understanding that, you know, when your parents had you, they might have been 25 or 30 or whatever. Well, they were still growing up too and learning about life and affected by finances and all these things that we all deal with. And so nobody's parents are perfect, and you're not going to be a perfect parent, and that's actually the norm. And I found that to be somewhat cathartic. We did some dyads. This was one of the more uncomfortable parts of it to me, where you sit in a chair and there's a person 2 feet away in a chair staring at you, and they would talk for 3 minutes and you weren't allowed to nod or or whatever. You're just a wall that they talk to, and then you switch places. And then we did another exercise where you would talk for a couple minutes. They give you a prompt and a subject to speak on. You talk for 2 minutes, and then the other person, it was a listening exercise. They have to tell you what you just said, and then you switch. And that was all pretty helpful. I've done some of that stuff with my wife. I'll say this here, I've done some therapy myself, about 6 months worth. I honestly didn't find it helpful. And so that's why I stopped doing it. One of the things we talked about with the therapist was that you should interview therapists, so you don't just kind of pick the first name you come across. You probably need to have a meeting with, or a 10-minute phone conversation with 6, 7, 8 people, and then you're gonna mesh more with one of those than the rest, and then that's your therapist. And if you're not getting anything out of it, then it's okay to change. You're not like locked in. You didn't get married. You know, so that's a mistake. Another mistake that I realized I made. I kind of stayed with, and he was a good guy. He just was too passive for me. My personality type, I want you to tell me something. This is what you need to do. Here's some actionable stuff that you can go and you can affect change, not just listening to me forever and ever. That wasn't helpful to me. We thought Saturday was taxing. Sunday morning was all about suicide, and recognizing it in others. We did some exercises where someone pretends to be suicidal, and you have to talk with them and make decisions on how to proceed based on what they told you. Again, we had some folders with some prompts, so that person's kind of playing a role where they have, a sheet of paper telling them what to do, and then we're winging it. That was very uncomfortable, very, very uncomfortable. We also talked within the group. Most of the people there have dealt with people that were close to them that harmed themselves. I was one of the few that hasn't had somebody do that. I've had 2 friends that were on the verge of, they didn't actually ever thankfully perform the act. And then we did some group stuff both days, which was actually the best part of all of it. It was the easiest part of all of it to me. So it's called Buck the Trend Mental Health Forum. We worked out of this workbook. We took a lot of notes and things. All of us are behind this deal. I think what we experienced there exceeded the expectations of every single person, the therapist, the group, the organizers, all of it. This is a very important issue that we need to get more comfortable talking about and dealing with, rather than avoiding, because it's uncomfortable. I will say this was an utterly exhausting weekend. Like we did the work. We dealt with uncomfortable from 7 o'clock in the morning till 7 p.m. for 2 solid days, and it was worthwhile but rough. So I will ask you. I'm gonna put a link in the description and all. Check this out. They were selling t-shirts. I know this was a rather expensive event to put on, and I don't think that the costs were quite covered. So if something in your heart is telling you to support this, then you can go buy a t-shirt or donate through that link. And we're definitely talking about having future ones at this point and trying to get this message out there. And that's all I'm doing right now. I'm talking about this openly with you, so hopefully some of the stigma gets removed. If you need some help, maybe you find some resources to do it, or maybe you help us put more of these on and help other people in the future, because we would way rather have the uncomfortable conversation with you than the funeral. No question about that. Thank you, and again, we will definitely have several upcoming podcasts that get more in depth about this and have interview some of the participants. They were all really good people. They put together a fantastic group of people, and these people, by talking about this publicly, are being incredibly brave, and I hope you all recognize that and support it however you may be led to support it.